The third and final video on nationalism before we move to the second half of the Union on the Industrial Revolution. We're going to focus mainly on the countries of Italy and Germany and see how they come together and unify. And then we'll see and we'll touch on very quickly the art movements that take place over the course of the entire century of the 1800s and see how these changes, nationalism in society and the economy and politics translates to different art movements of the 19th century.
For our quiz, we should understand and be able to compare and contrast how empires are being built together and how empires are being torn apart. So we've already seen one empire be torn apart. We saw how the Russian Empire and its policy of Russification, trying to unify Russia, actually worked to disunify Russia. Another empire that we'll see break up during this time period is the Austrian Empire, also break up. Now, we'll get into Austria and Prussia in a little bit here when we get to German unification, but in 1866, Austria is going to be in the losing end to a war with Prussia. What this allows is that in the German Confederation, a loose organization of major German states in Central Europe, Prussia very much in this victory gains control of this German Confederation, moves eyes towards Berlin. It moves the economy towards Berlin away from Vienna, which is going to cause problems for the Austrians. Now, one group within the Austrian Empire have been the Hungarians, and pressure from the Hungarians forces the Austrian Empire to divide his empire into two, Austria and Hungary. However, the compromise that he makes with the Hungarians is that the Austrian emperor will remain the ruler of both Austria and Hungary, which will form the new empire of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. And so what we see in here is the Hungarians getting more of a say and more power and more autonomy within the empire, but yet they're still controlled by the Austrians. So this is going to be just one step in a long line of where we'll see the Austrian Empire kind of unravel from its power in the center of Europe. Like Russia, the Austrian Emperor is ruling several different ethnic groups: Bosnians, Croats, Slavs, Slovenians, Tyroleans, Bohemians, Moravians, Silesians, Galatians, Transylvanians, and a myriad of others within this kind of polyglot empire, all speaking their own language and all kind of have their own culture and histories. And so the Austrian Empire is going to be an example of empire breaking apart, just like how we saw the Russian Empire begin to fray and crumble in this time period as well. So two empires that fall apart. We want to spend the bulk of the rest of this video talking about two empires that are come together. The first is going to be Italy. Now, in the north of Italy is a region called the Piedmont, the state of Sardinia. This is a strong state. Northern Italy, we talked about with the Romans, has much more of the industrial base throughout history, what we would call quote unquote industry, as well as the it's a better agricultural base to be able to build a state on. So very strong state, very good army, as again it's having to fight against the Austrians, against the French, against other European, against other Italian city-states to be able to kind of grow up from there. Now, as the calendar turns into the mid-1800s, Camillo de Cavour becomes the prime minister for the Piedmont, for the state of Sardinia. And Cavour is very, 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 very good politician. He's an excellent speaker. He's an excellent diplomat. He's an excellent deal maker. So via Cavour, by way of Cavour, Parma, Modena, Tuscany, and some of the papal states begin to form alliances with the Piedmont to create a larger state in the north of Italy that all be kind of coalesce under the control of the King of Sardinia. This is going to culminate with a war with Austria again losing, and the Piedmont, the Kingdom of Sardinia, kicking Austria out of northern Italy. So from this point, the only major player left in northern Italy is the Piedmont. However, There's no Rome, there's no southern Italy. So how does Italy come together just yet? That comes under the role of Garibaldi. In 1859, Giuseppe Garibaldi and his followers, his army, all wearing the uniform of the red shirts, so Garibaldi has the red shirts, are sent by the Piedmont to settle a conflict on the island of Sicily. Remember, Italy looks like a boot. It looks like the toe of that boot is kicking an island. The island is Sicily. They very quickly settle that conflict, and then that kind of moves them over to southern Italy. They begin to work their way up Campania through Capua towards Rome, and they begin to move themselves up the boot of Italy, working their way towards Rome. And eventually, Garibaldi's forces will unite with the southern border of the Piedmont. And at the height of his power, at the height of his popularity, when Garibaldi could do no wrong in the eyes of the Italians, when there's calls for him to march on the King of Sardinia, to take on the Pope, Garibaldi says, "Nope, I'm done," gives up his sword and retires to his Italian villa. So the northern part of Italy is going to coalesce under the Kingdom of Sardinia and the Piedmont. And through conquest and then through more so diplomacy, most of northern Italy is going to come under control, with the exception of Rome down here. Now, Garibaldi is going to be sent to the island of Sicily, but he's able to do that through the work of Camillo de Cavour. And Cavour helps set the stage for a united northern Italy and allows Garibaldi to work his way successfully up the boot. So Garibaldi steps aside at the height of his power, and King Victor Emmanuel II, the ruler of the Piedmont, is allowed and strikes a deal to become the leader of united Italy. Now, importantly, we've left off one major important part of Italy, that's Rome. What do you do with Rome? Well, Italy first sets its eyes on Venice. Its independent state of Venetia is taken away from Austria. Venice is now folded into the Italian countryside, and then the Italians set their sights on the papacy. In 1870, Italy, the country, makes a deal with the papacy and allows the Pope to give up the control of most of Rome to Italy to rule as its capital from. In return, the Pope is given a small section of Rome to rule as its leader. And as again, we're a Joliet Catholic, so as good Catholic students know, this small section of Rome that the Pope rules is the smallest country on earth, and that is the Vatican City. So you can fly to Italy, go to the Italian capital of Rome, and within that capital, you can go to another country of the Vatican City. And one of the fun touristy things to do is to buy yourself a postcard and go to the one small post office in the Vatican and get the special stamp that they put over your stamp that you use to mail it back to yourself. So you can have one foot in Rome and one foot in the Vatican, one foot in the Rome, one foot in the Vatican to be able to go and see that. So we know this is Giuseppe Garibaldi because he is wearing, yes, that's right, his red shirt. And so there's a painting and that's a picture of him. So Garibaldi, again, goes down to the south of Sicily, works his way up, and then again yells that. The Sardinians are able to make a deal with Venetia, win it away from Austria, then they go and they take on Rome. So that's why this cartoon is a pretty good job of understanding Italian nation building. We have on our left Giuseppe Garibaldi, we have on our right Camillo Cavour, and through Cavour's diplomacy and Garibaldi's military victories, here as these cobblers are shaping this boot, the Italian state is created that we see lasting still to this day. So switching gears from Italy to now Germany, and I would maybe put this chart into my notes. With German unification, there's factors that have existed for a while that are promoting German unification to try to bring all these various German states together since the Peace of Westphalia, and factors that are hindering unity with German unification. One factor that's promoting unity is the common nationality. All of these small German states all speak German, right? They all like to drink their own local beer. They all like pretzels, right? They have a common German understanding and a, quote, Germanness, end quote, to themselves. We see Napoleon's influence. We talked about this in our last video on the fall of Napoleon. Napoleon, as he's conquering through Central Europe, gets to all these German states and says, this is wild, this is crazy, this is ridiculous. Why do all these small states need to exist? And he begins to reorganize them, begins to bring them together into larger, more manageable government units. And that dismantlement of German states, the bringing them together, has a huge push towards uniting more Germans. If you already lost your own little tiny little duchy or bishopric or burger, and you're now a part of all this, your burgermeister is going to go and make you more accepting to become part of a bigger chunk of quote unquote Germany. The Congress of Vienna would very much like a strong Central European state to balance out the strong Eastern state in Russia, as well as a strong Western state in France. And so the Congress of Vienna is very much going to promote this unity to balance Russia. A Germany that is broken up into all these thousands of bishoprics and duchies and counties and small states is good for a Russia, is good for a France, is good for a Britain, right? But it's bad for all the other small countries in Europe because it gets undue influence to those larger ones. So a larger German country is going to kind of offset. The other major factor that comes into existence in the 1900s is what's called the Zollverein. This is a economic union in the best sense of the word that the German states kind of all agree to where instead of working as all these thousands of economies working against each other, the Zollverein works to kind of bring them together economically. And once you have economic unification, political and social unification soon follow. The Zollverein gets rid of a lot of extraneous and needless taxes. If you're going through, say, from Munich in the south of modern day Germany to Berlin in the north of modern day Germany, all those different states are their own independent country that can charge their own custom duties and taxes. So it makes no sense for me to sell my pretzels from Munich in Berlin because I'm going to have to charge an arm and a leg in Berlin to pay for all the taxes and fees and custom duties that I had to pay. I'll just go someplace else. So this is going to help get rid of a lot of those duties and custom taxes and fees, which is going to be good for consumers, and again, work towards bringing the German people together. Now, there's other factors that are hindering unity. These are things that are bringing Germany together for a while and really starting to ramp up in the early 1800s, but there's still a lot of factors working against this unity. One, there's differences amongst the German people. There's a reason why all these different bishoprics and states exist is because the German people aren't just one quote German end quote people. You're a lot of this has to do again with the Reformation and religion, and so we see more Catholics in Germany in the south, more Protestants in the north, and that religious difference is going to be a major issue. Austria does not want. Come on, there we go. Austria does not want a united Germany because a united Germany is going to be a major power that is going to kind of be an equal to Austria. Austria is used to ruling Central Europe under Austrian rule and how it wants to. The smaller German states that are going to be swallowed up, the Schleswigs, the Holsteins, the Lübecks, the Pomeranias, right? These smaller German states that are very prideful, that have existed for centuries. In a big Germany, they're going to be swallowed up and they're going to be lost. So the smaller German states don't want to unify because their individualness is going to be wiped away. And then France does not want a strong Germany. France likes being the dominant power in this part of Europe. A united Germany will be an economic and industrial equal to France. France does not want that. So these are the forces that are working to bring Germany together as well as to try to keep Germany apart. So what we see here, this is the rise of the German Zollverein. And so again, we kind of see a proto-Zollverein here in the 1830s. What ends up happening is that all these German states agree that we're going to work with under one currency, under one system to kind of go and bring all of this together. So that economic union is very much going to allow for a political, and social union to follow on its heels. Now, the big person pushing for German unification and important for German unification is Otto von Bismarck. Now, Otto von Bismarck, the prime minister for Prussia, and the Junkers, the noble class of Prussians, are very, 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 very conservative. So they want to unify they want to unify a Germany and the German people, but they want to do it in a way that's going to keep the powers of the Junkers, keep the power of Prussian ascendancy, as well as make sure that they're going to be able to rule how they want to rule in an autocratic way and not under the fancy romantic ideals of the French Revolution. This is very much espoused in Otto von Bismarck's belief in politics, and so he talks about realpolitik, the politics of reality. These are tough power politics with no room for idealism. It doesn't matter how well this could work, or in a perfect society this would be great. This is what is going to work now to help the most amount of people or to be able to further the conservative or Bismarck agenda. And Bismarck very much is going to say, his famous quote that he gives is, blood and iron will decide the issues of the day. That really the only thing that's important to be able to make these politics of reality is blood, is warfare, is an army, is sacrifice, as well as industry. Heavy industry is what's going to make a country big and strong. Uh, Karl von Clausewitz is writing in a similar time period, and Clausewitz very much writes that warfare is politics by another name. That very much is in line with what Bismarck is trying to get across in his ideas here. So the steps in Germanification really begins with the creation of Prussian military power and this proto-militarism that we'll see start to rise and begin to be pushed towards World War I, with the idea that the military is the tool at your disposal to solve all of a state's problem, and you're going to build that military up to do this. And so through this Prussian military power, Prussia has become the envy of the world for its military, with universal military conscription, with people staying in reserves for uh, 10, 20 years, with the entire nation almost serving in the interests of the Prussian military power. The creation of the Prussian military general staff, where the smartest people in the Prussian military are taken away from the front lines where they could be killed and put into a room and say, hey, how is Prussia going to attack the United States? What happens if Mexico and British Uganda and Australia decide to attack Prussia? How is Prussia going to win the war in that sense? Austrian influence is going to be kind of pushed out with a victorious Prussia, as Prussia's on the rise. And so that's going to push Austria out into its own kind of development, its own path, and allow the Prussians to kind of push towards this. Prussia then goes on the war path. It's going to fight three wars: the Danish War in 1864, the Seven Weeks' War, or the Austro-Prussian War in 1866. Now, importantly, these wars are quick. These wars are one-sided. Prussia uses the advantage of its military and its railroads to quickly move overwhelming force into areas to quickly end these wars. It's the 7 weeks war because it takes less than 2 months to go and do that. Yes. This allows for Prussia to be able to get northern German states to confederize, to come together under Prussian leadership. And then Bismarck is able to maneuver France into declaring war that begins what's called the Franco-Prussian War, the third of the big wars that Prussia fights here in the about a 20-year period. The Franco-Prussian War is between the France and the Prussians. Now, importantly, France loses. This war is over in about 7, 8 weeks. The French are kind of goaded into attack. The Prussians sweep in behind them, capture the French army and the French king, and it takes about a year to get these negotiations back. The Prussians march on Paris and hold the city hostage. It's here in 1871 that we see the establishment of a German empire. The loss of France in the Franco-Prussian War is a black eye on the face of Paris. Right? The destruction of French military power is so complete, the French are so hapless at the end of this war that the German Reich This new German Empire is signed, it is dated, it is declared in the Hall of Mirrors at the Palace of Versailles, the building built to showcase French power and prestige in the 1600s. The German Empire is declared there. So that should kind of color what we're talking about here in terms of how powerful of a defeat this is for the French. This is Otto von Bismarck. So again, young on the left, old on the right, and he is the big person promoting German unification uh, towards out of the Prussian military state and kind of going on afterwards. This is a great kind of cartoon, kind of showing and summing up a big ideas. This is the womanly personification of Germania, of this of greater Germany, and who's there as a blacksmith building and forging this Germany is Bismarck, right? With his hammer and his anvil and his sword to give Germany to be able to kind of come and create. And the German state is created out of war, out of industry, with the Franco-Prussian War and the battles of Sedan. Again, France loses the Franco-Prussian War. The victory of the Prussians is so complete. I mean, look how sad the French diplomat here looks, is that under the Arc de Triomphe, built to talk about the triumphs of Napoleonic victories, the Prussians marched their military through that. The Hall of Mirrors is turned into a convalescent home for wounded Prussian soldiers. And again, when they're cleared out, the Prussian um, give way to a German empire under Kaiser Wilhelm, and a German Reich is declared in this room built to showcase French power. So that's how big of a defeat this is. And so now we have a unified Germany. Now, the timeline is important here. Germany's unifying in the 1870s, right? That's well after the Netherlands has, that's well after England and Spain and France, the United States has. And all those countries have unified and started to expand their borders worldwide. Germany is now just unifying. So when they're going to expand, there's not a whole lot of places to go around the world that haven't been claimed yet. So Germany's going to be upset about this, and we're trying to set the stage here for our First World War. So in 1871, this is the German Empire, the German Reich that is then created that we'll see in this big, giant, large state in northern Central Europe have a giant amount of influence for the rest of the 1800s and turn around and turn the century into the 1900s. Quickly, the German Empire under Bismarck, we see a centralization of power under Bismarck as a prime minister before he's going to be forced out by Kaiser Wilhelm II, the second leader of the German Reich. We see a continuation of militarism. The German army is basically just going to take the Prussian army and pop it right into its forefront, and the new Germany is able to build its German army on the structure of the Prussian military, and this militarism is going to continue. And again, if you're a German, you like this because the Prussian militarism expanded Prussia. Maybe you're thinking it's going to expand Germany as well. We see encouragement of industrialization. We see a mass giant push for industrialization, and very quickly, by the time we get to the turn of the 1900s, we have Britain being the second major industrial state in the world behind the United States, with Germany very quickly hot on the British heels. Under the German Empire, we see propaganda against the Jews. We just want to make sure we mention that. There's anti-Semitism is really running rampant around the world, in the United States, in Western Europe, in Eastern Europe during this time period. We see the Dreyfus Affair happening in France, which is a major deal in the French military. So we see propaganda against the Jews. It's not out and out hatred, but again, we're laying the foundations for the First World War and the Second World War and the Holocaust already here in this time period. Like Russification in Russia, Germany pushes a Germanization amongst the minorities in Germany, but unlike Russia, where the people in Russia saw Russia was being torn apart by, say, the Crimean War and the Russo-Japanese War, especially, the minorities in Germany see a country on the rise, see a country on the up, that it's one to you want to hitch your wagon to. So Germanization is going to be met with very little resistance in Germany because of the direction Germany's pointing. It looks like Germany can do no wrong. Germany is becoming the envy of the world with its military, with its sciences, with its industry. People might say, hey, Germany's not too bad, where we see the opposite happening with a Russia that's falling apart at the seams. To push this Germanization to the outer borders, Germany is going to fight a Kulturkampf, a culture war, pushing German culture as being supreme and better than all the other ones. Socialism is going to start to kind of be pushed forward. This we'll get into this in the second half of this unit with the Industrial Revolution. Germany is going to be very against these socialist ideas. It's going to be extraordinarily anti-communist and extraordinarily anti-socialist, and we'll see how these effects play out as we move into the 20th century. So this is where we're going to pause with our study of nationalism. We're going to end it there. And we're going to move into, during the same time period, a revolution in the arts that takes place over the course of the entire 1800s. So what we're seeing here is that we're going to do three major art movements. We're going to talk about the entire course of art in Western Europe, the rest of Europe, a little bit into the Americas for the entire century from 1800 to 1900. So the first major art movement that takes place is Romanticism. Romanticism envelops a deep interest in both nature and the thoughts and feelings of individuals. When we talk about romantic ideals of art and literature and music, we're not talking about a guy and a girl falling in love and living happily ever after, or taking your girlfriend out to a romantic date at a Chili's, because that's what freshmen think is a romantic date. But we're talking about this ideas, and your book does a pretty good job, and we did a question of the day on this, of the ideas of nature, of the mysterious, of the unknown, of folklore, of cultural traditions. Those type of ideals is what the Romantic movement is built on. This is a reaction against the Enlightenment. The Enlightenment was all about how do things work? How does this happen? What law, what mathematical formula can I plug in to recreate this replication of nature on a piece of paper? The Romantics don't like that. The Romantics want to bring in the mysticism, the unknown, the idea that some things are better left untold, that are better left in the realm of mystery than going and finding it out. And that's kind of what the Romantics are pushing in this idea. We still see the effects of Romanticism in our lives today. This idea that you need to go and make yourself better by immersing yourself in other cultures, that a person needs to go see the world. All these TikTok and Instagram influencers that are in Cambodia and Bali and in Paris and in Capri and Santorini, saying, "Oh, look how crazy and awesome these things are." That's a romantic idea that we, as a Western society and Western civilization, still kind of hasn't dropped. This idea that you need to go see the world and experience culture and taste the food of all these different peoples around the world to better understand yourself. That eat, pray, love of the kind of romantic movement is still around today. Now, we need to know some of the examples for our quiz, and to be honest, our final exam will have in May. So some examples of romantic literature include the English poets Keats and Shelley, the German writers Goethe and the Brothers Grimm, and the French writer Victor Hugo. In terms of romantic music, the composers Beethoven, Schumann, Chopin, Mendelssohn, Verdi, Richard Wagner is an excellent example of romanticism in music. We'll show you in class the What's Opera Doc, where Chuck Jones directs a Bugs Bunny Elmer Fudd cartoon set in the world of Wagnerian opera. Romanticism is reaction against the Enlightenment. So the Romanticism is all about the mysterious and the unknown. As we move into the middle of the 1800s, there's a reaction against Romanticism. The reaction against Romanticism is the art movement of realism. Realism tried to show life as it was, not as it should be. So romantics have their heads in the clouds, pie in the sky. What could life be? How life could be awesome? Realists are saying, no, that's not how it is. Life is X, it's Y, it's Z, and we can prove it. And the realists can prove it because the realists have new technology that allows them to do that. And the key piece of technology here is photography and the camera. Photography literally lets me take a picture of something as it is. There's no line to a photograph for the most part. Okay, and so that's the big idea that we see here. Photography is the major thing that goes with the invention of photography that pushes other forms of literature, where you get Charles Dickens, Emilia Zola, and Honoré de Balzac writing very realistic portrayals of their characters and their stories. The reaction to realism as we move towards the end of the 19th century, the 1800s, is Impressionism, where artists are trying to show just their impression of a subject or a moment in time. And the Impressionists are very much concerned on Impressionism, very much more of an art movement versus, say, Realism and Romanticism, which is encompassing more of the arts. Impressionism more in painting is a better way to say that. And light, how does light interplay in the in the world on canvas? And so your famous Impressionist artists include Monet, Degas, Renoir. So hopefully you're figuring out these are might be France is where the Impressionist movement kind of goes and picks out of. So again, Romanticism, I know what the art movement is all about, and I know examples, hints, winks, and nudges as we show you some pictures here of the art produced by these different art movements. So we'll start with Romanticism. So these are all examples of romantic art in literature. Keats, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, Sorrows of Young Werther by Van Gogh, Beethoven, Wagner in art, The Hunchback of Notre Dame, Grimm's fairy tales. Hints, winks, and nudges. Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, an excellent work of romantic literature. Why is that, Mr. Kramer? Does the monster Frankenstein marry Mrs. Frankenstein? No, but again, Frankenstein's monster. How does he come to life? Well, it's not really science. It's science-ish. It's science fiction. The monster is horrific. It's grotesque. It's dealing with other themes. Great example there, right? The Hunchback of Notre Dame with Quasimodo. Another great kind of excellent example of romantic literature. As we move into the middle of the century, we have the invention of the photograph. And the photograph allows people like Edward Maybridge to make his motion studies, where he can literally go and take these pictures, take them at fractions of a second to be able to go and see how actually a horse moves. How does a horse gallop? How does a man move? How do your muscles move as you're going? And that is a very much a realistic portrayal of a horse in movement or a man jumping or a woman walking up a flight of stairs and then hopping down. Now, again, if we take these pictures and say we take 24 of these pictures every second, and we have 10 seconds of this footage, and we take this and we put it into a circle, and we spin the circle with a light bulb in the middle and slits cut in between the pictures on the side, it's going to look like this woman is moving. And that's again where we go and we get this idea of moving pictures, motion pictures, and movies all start to come out of this. And again, they're showing you exactly what is in front of the camera. And so that's very much a realistic idea. So the realism of the invention of photography allows for hint, wink, nudge, Charles Dickens to write very famous realistic novels of life in England, in London during this time period. The Emilia de Zola, who's going to write Nana in Germinal, is a big idea, and the Honoré de Balzac, who are going and writing in French, are also important realistic writers of literature. Finally, Impressionism is very much a movement in the art of painting, and so that's where we get things like this. All right, and so again, Monet's A Lady with a Parasol and his water lilies are excellent examples of Impressionism. Impressionism also kind of deals with this idea of impressions. And if I go very close up this painting, I'm just going to see a bunch of dots, but somebody in the back of the classroom might see a woman with a young boy in the background. And you can see the light going and reflecting through the parasol, reflecting off the grass onto the woman's light dress. So very much of what the Impressionists are all about in terms of light. So those are examples of Monet's. These are Degas, and our final one is of Renoir and his luncheon at the boat party. So this ends the chapter in the book on nationalism, and we're going to move from here and see what's happening concurrently around the world with the Industrial Revolution and the effects of all these countries industrializing is going to have on world history.